The autumn sun cast long shadows across Memorial Park, painting golden streaks between the rust-colored leaves that carpeted the stone pathways. Children's laughter and the distant chime of an ice cream cart filled the air with ordinary joy. But for 8-year-old Lily Anderson, the world suddenly froze in a heartbeat of recognition. Her small hand clutched the strap of her worn backpack, knuckles whitening as her wide blue eyes locked onto a figure at the path's end, a large dog with matted gray fur so filthy its original color was unrecognizable. The animal's body was skeletal, ribs protruding like cruel fingers beneath patchy fur, but those eyes, amber eyes, once sharp and vigilant, now clouded with suffering, made Lily's chest constrict as if gripped by an invisible hand. "Ranger," she whispered, her voice breaking on a name unused for 3 years. It couldn't be. Her father's faithful companion, the partner he'd loved, the friend who'd vanished the same day Dad never came home. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. Oak Ridge. Virginia had always been a picture-perfect slice of American suburbia. Tidy homes with well-kept lawns, neighbors who waved from driveways, and a community that prided itself on safety and stability. But beneath its pleasant exterior, the town had become a landscape of ghosts for young Lily Anderson. 3 years ago, her father, Tom Anderson, a decorated canine handler with the Special Operations Unit, vanished during what officials would only describe as a classified operation gone wrong. The military officers who delivered the news spoke of honor and sacrifice, offering condolences but no body, no funeral, and precious few answers. The only certainty was absence, a father-shaped hole in Lily's life that nothing could fill. Ranger had been Tom's partner, a magnificent German shepherd with intelligence that seemed almost human. Together, they had deployed on missions that Tom could never fully discuss, locating explosives, rescuing hostages, tracking targets through impossible terrain. The bond between handler and dog had been unbreakable, or so everyone thought until Ranger, too, disappeared. Reassigned, according to the brief explanation Lily's mother received before her own death from cancer 18 months later. Now, Lily lived with her Aunt Sarah Anderson in a home filled with framed photographs and painful silences. Sarah tried her best, arranging play dates, attending school functions, reading bedtime stories, but she couldn't penetrate the wall Lily had built around her grief. The little girl who once bubbled with laughter had become solemn and watchful, her eyes carrying a weight no child should bear. Their neighbor, Harold "Harry" Mason, was the only person who seemed to understand. The 70-year-old Vietnam veteran with arthritic hands and a perpetual scowl had lost people too, and never bothered with empty reassurances. Instead, he taught Lily to fish, showed her how to grow tomatoes, and listened when she spoke of her father as if he might still come home. The kindly Dr. Rebecca Collins at the Sunnydale Veterinary Clinic had been Lily's mother's friend, now checking in on them with casseroles and quiet concern. And somewhere in the shadows lurked Richard Sterling, director of Meridian Security Solutions, the private contractor who had smoothly taken over management of military canine assets after budget cuts 3 years ago. None of them could have predicted how a chance encounter in Memorial Park would unravel secrets that powerful people had killed to protect. Lily's heart pounded against her ribs as she took one hesitant step forward, then another. The dog lay beside a weathered bench where a bearded man in a tattered jacket sat hunched against the autumn breeze. What passed for a leash was nothing more than a frayed rope tied to Ranger's worn collar, itself hanging loose around his emaciated neck. "Ranger," she whispered again, closer now, despite his obvious weakness. The dog's ears twitched at the sound of his name. He struggled to lift his head, each movement visibly painful, and fixed his gaze on Lily. That look cut through the years of separation like a blade through cobwebs. Lily dropped to her knees, heedless of the dirt and scattered leaves. "It's really you," she breathed, tears welling in her eyes. She extended a trembling hand, fingers hovering inches from Ranger's matted fur. The bearded man straightened suddenly, protective suspicion hardening his features. "Hey now, what are you doing with my dog?" His voice was rough but not unkind, the voice of someone who had little left to call his own. Lily froze, her hand still outstretched. "He's not your dog," she said, with a quiet certainty that belied her 8 years. "He's Ranger. He was my dad's partner. I'd know him anywhere." She pointed to a distinctive scar running along the dog's left shoulder, a mark she'd traced with small fingers countless times while her father told stories of their missions. The man, Mike, he eventually introduced himself, frowned. "Found him behind the Westridge Industrial Park about 6 weeks back, eating garbage, all skin and bones. Nobody claimed him." Mike's weathered face softened as he looked at Lily's tears. "You really know this dog, little girl?" Lily nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. When Mike hesitantly allowed her to touch Ranger, the dog made a sound somewhere between a whimper and a sigh. His tail, once proud and plumed, managed only a feeble thump against the ground, but his eyes never left Lily's face. "I've been calling him Soldier," Mike said, watching their reunion with conflicted emotions. "Figured he was military or police, sits at attention sometimes, even now, watches the perimeter. You know what I mean." After nearly an hour of conversation, sharing fragments of her father's stories and describing the distinctive commands Tom had used, Lily had convinced Mike that she was indeed Ranger's family. The man's reluctance to part with his companion was palpable, but something in the way Ranger looked at Lily made the decision for him. "You got people to take care of him proper?" Mike asked, concern evident beneath his gruff exterior. "He needs medicine, good food." "Ain't right. What happened to him?" Lily promised with all the solemnity an 8-year-old could muster, though she had no idea how she would keep that promise. Aunt Sarah had made it clear that pets were out of the question, too expensive, too much responsibility, too many memories of Tom, with Mike's blessing and Ranger limping slowly beside her. Lily led the German shepherd through back alleys and side streets, avoiding neighbors who might recognize him. The garden shed behind Aunt Sarah's neat colonial became Ranger's temporary sanctuary. Hastily outfitted with an old sleeping bag and a bowl of water Lily smuggled from the kitchen. "I'll come back with food," she whispered, stroking his head gently. "You have to stay quiet. Okay. It's just until Aunt Sarah understands." That night, Lily snuck half her dinner into a napkin, roast chicken and potatoes that represented a feast to the starving animal. She watched with tears in her eyes as Ranger ate slowly, deliberately, each bite seemingly painful but necessary. When he finished, he dragged himself to her side and rested his head on her lap with a sigh that carried the weight of 3 lost years. For 2 days, Lily maintained her secret, creating increasingly elaborate excuses to spend time in the garden. She brought water, shared her meals, and even smuggled out a bottle of children's pain reliever, carefully measuring drops into Ranger's water based on internet research conducted during computer time at school. On the third day, her fragile plan collapsed when Harry Mason spotted her crossing his yard with a suspicious bundle wrapped in her jacket. "What have you got there?" "Kiddo," he called, setting down his garden shears. "Looks like you're up to something." Lily froze, caught between the instinct to run and the knowledge that she couldn't outpace a grown man, even one with a bad hip and 7 decades behind him. "Nothing," she tried, the obvious lie falling flat between them. Harry's bushy eyebrows rose toward his balding head. "That nothing smells an awful lot like the roast beef your aunt made for dinner." His voice softened as he noted her panicked expression. "I'm not going to rat you out, Lily, but if you're in some kind of trouble, maybe this old man can help." Something in his kind eyes broke through Lily's resolve. "It's Ranger," she blurted out. "Dad's dog. I found him in the park. He's really sick. Mr. Mason, and Aunt Sarah can't know because she'll make me give him away. And I can't lose him too. Not after Dad—" Her voice cracked under the strain of too much emotion. Harry's weathered face registered shock, then concern. "Your dad's military dog, the German Shepherd." When Lily nodded, he ran a hand over his face. "Well, I'll be— Where is he now?" Minutes later, Harry stood in the doorway of the garden shed, staring at the once magnificent animal now reduced to a shadow of himself. Unlike Lily, Harry recognized more than malnutrition in Ranger's condition. He saw the telltale signs of neglect bordering on abuse, the way Ranger positioned himself with an escape route in view, the flinch when hands moved too quickly, the wary assessment in eyes that had seen too much. "Jesus Christ," he muttered under his breath, before turning to Lily with forced optimism. "He needs more than table scraps. Kiddo, let me help." When Harry knelt carefully beside Ranger, the dog's posture changed subtly. Despite his weakness, there was a flicker of recognition, not of Harry personally, but of something in his bearing, his scent, perhaps. Veteran recognizing veteran across the species barrier. "Well, I'll be damned," Harry whispered, gently examining the worn collar. His fingers found something that made him pause, a small metal tag embedded in the leather, stamped with the letters MSS and a serial number. "Meridian Security Solutions," he said, more to himself than to Lily. "So that's where you ended up." Over the next 3 days, Harry became Lily's co-conspirator. The old veteran brought proper dog food, clean water, and a worn but serviceable dog bed that had belonged to his own companion years ago. More importantly, he brought knowledge how to check Ranger's gums for signs of dehydration, how to examine paw pads for injury, how to coax a traumatized animal to trust again. "He's not just underfed," Harry observed on the 4th morning, his gnarled fingers gently probing Ranger's side. "Something's wrong inside. He needs a real vet. Lily's face crumpled. "Aunt Sarah will find out. She'll call animal control." Harry's weathered face softened at the child's distress. "I might know somebody who can help. Rebecca Collins. She runs the clinic over on Maple Street. Her daddy and I serve together." He paused, considering his next words carefully. "But Lily, if we do this, you need to be prepared. Ranger's in bad shape, and we don't know what—" "He's not going to die," Lily interrupted with fierce determination. "Not Ranger. Dad always said he was the toughest partner he ever had." Harry didn't argue, recognizing the desperate hope in the child's eyes. Instead, he made a phone call, speaking in the hushed tones adults used when trying to shield children from harsh realities. Whatever he said, it worked. That evening, after Sarah had left for her book club, Dr. Collins's blue sedan pulled into the driveway. Rebecca Collins was younger than Lily expected, with kind eyes and a gentle efficiency in her movements. She carried a medical bag and spoke to Lily not as a child, but as Ranger's advocate, asking detailed questions about his eating, drinking, and bathroom habits. In the shed, now illuminated by a battery-powered lantern, Dr. Collins conducted a thorough examination. Her professional demeanor slipped only once, when she discovered a pattern of small circular scars hidden beneath Ranger's fur. "Cigarette burns," she murmured to Harry, pitched too low for Lily to hear. Her eyes hardened. Deliberate, recent. Harry's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice steady for Lily's sake. "Can you help him, Doc?" Dr. Collins nodded, already unpacking fluids and medication. "I'll do what I can here, but I need to check for something." From her bag, she produced a handheld scanner, passing it slowly over Ranger's body until it emitted a soft beep near his shoulder blade. "He's microchipped, as I suspected. Military working dogs usually are." The scanner's screen displayed a series of numbers and letters. Dr. Collins frowned, tapping the device. "That's odd. Instead of standard registration, it's showing a decommission code. MSSPR 2371 status, liquidated asset." "Liquidated?" Lily asked, the unfamiliar word rolling awkwardly off her tongue. Harry and Dr. Collins exchanged a look over Lily's head. "It means Ranger was retired from service," Harry supplied, the simplification sitting uncomfortably in the air. Dr. Collins continued her examination, administering fluids and antibiotics with practiced hands. "He's malnourished, dehydrated, and has a respiratory infection. There's evidence of healed fractures that weren't properly set." Her voice remained clinical, but her eyes flashed with barely contained anger. Whoever had him after his military service treated him like disposable equipment. As she worked, Dr. Collins explained that Meridian Security Solutions had secured a government contract 3 years ago to manage retired military working dogs. The company promised rehabilitation, retraining for civilian security work when possible, and humane retirement when not. "But there have been rumors," she added, packing away her stethoscope. "Too many dogs disappearing, medical records that don't match conditions." "I've treated 3 former military dogs in the past year, all in terrible shape, all supposedly properly discharged from MSS. Lily stroked Ranger's head as he dozed, sedated by pain medication. "Why would anyone hurt him? He's a hero. Dad said he saved lives." Dr. Collins had no answer, but Harry's face darkened with comprehension. "Military dogs know things, see things. If your dad's disappearance wasn't an accident. The implication hung in the air like smoke, too terrible to voice fully in front of the child. Dr. Collins shot Harry a warning look before turning back to Lily. Let's focus on getting Ranger healthy. I'll come back tomorrow with more supplies. She hesitated. Lily, I don't want to get your hopes up. Ranger is very sick. He needs proper facilities. Tests I can't do here. We'll figure something out, Harry interjected, seeing Lily's face fall. Always do. After Dr. Collins left, Harry stayed with Lily in the shed, both reluctant to leave Ranger alone. In the lantern's soft glow, the old veteran told gentle stories about his own military dog from Vietnam, a German shepherd named Duke who could find tripwires that human eyes missed. As Ranger slept, Harry carefully examined his collar again. There's something odd about this, he muttered, fingers tracing the worn leather. Feel this seam here. It's not standard issue. Using his pocket knife, Harry carefully separated the double layer of leather to reveal a hidden compartment. Inside was a small metal USB drive, no bigger than a postage stamp. What's that? Lily whispered, eyes wide. Harry stared at the tiny device. I don't know, kiddo. But someone went to a lot of trouble to hide it. He slipped it into his pocket just as headlights swept across the yard, announcing Sarah's return. You better get inside before your aunt finds you missing, Harry said. I'll stay with Ranger tonight. Lily hesitated, torn between obedience and abandonment. Promise you won't leave him. Harry's weathered hand covered hers. Scout's honor, little lady. Now scoot. Lily made it inside just as Sarah's key turned in the front door. She feigned sleep when her aunt checked on her, heart hammering against her ribs, mind racing with questions. Why would Ranger have a hidden USB drive? What happened after Dad disappeared? Who had hurt Ranger? And why morning brought the answers to none of these questions. But it did bring disaster. Lily woke to the sound of raised voices from the backyard. She raced downstairs and out the back door to find Sarah standing in the open doorway of the shed, face pale with shock, while Harry tried to explain. Military dog, Sarah, Tom's partner. The girl found him half dead in the park. What was she supposed to do? Call animal control like any sensible person. Sarah's voice cracked with stress. Not hide a dangerous animal in my yard. He's not dangerous, Lily cried, pushing between them. He's Ranger. Dad's Ranger. Sarah turned, noticing Lily for the first time. Go back inside, Lily. We're calling animal control. No. Lily threw herself down beside Ranger, who had struggled to his feet despite his weakness. You can't take him. He needs me. Be reasonable. Sarah. Harry interjected. Look at his condition. Someone abused this dog systematically. The same people might be connected to Tom's disappearance. Sarah's face hardened. Don't you dare. Don't you dare give her false hope about Thomas. He's gone. And bringing his dog back won't change that. He's not just a dog, Lily sobbed, arms wrapped around Ranger's neck. He's the only part of Dad I have left. Something in Lily's broken voice penetrated Sarah's anger. She really looked at the child and the dog, at the protective way Ranger positioned himself despite his weakness, at the desperate hope in Lily's tear-streaked face. 3 days, Sarah finally said. shoulders slumping. "He can stay 3 days while we figure out what to do. But if he shows any aggression, any at all, he's gone." "Understood." Lily nodded vigorously, relief washing over her face. But as Sarah walked back to the house, Harry's expression remained troubled. He pulled the USB drive from his pocket, turning it over in his palm. "We need to find out what's on this," he murmured. "And we need to be very careful about who knows we have it." The kitchen table became an impromptu war room that evening after Lily had gone to bed. Sarah sat with her hands wrapped around a mug of cooling tea, her expression caught between disbelief and dawning horror as Harry laid out what they'd discovered. "A hidden USB drive cigarette burns, Harry. This sounds like something from a spy novel, not real life." Sarah's voice was hushed, though Lily's bedroom was upstairs and well out of earshot. Harry's weathered fingers tapped against the small metal drive. "I wish it were fiction, but that dog didn't burn himself. And someone went to an awful lot of trouble to hide this. Even if there is something sinister going on, what does it have to do with Tom?" Sarah pushed her auburn hair back from her face, a gesture so reminiscent of her brother that Harry felt a pang of recognition. "The military said it was an operation gone wrong, classified details. We didn't even get a body to bury." "And doesn't that strike you as odd?" Harry leaned forward. "No body, no details, just a folded flag and condolences. Meanwhile, his highly trained military dog gets shuffled off to some private contractor and ends up looking like he crawled through hell." Sarah flinched. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm not suggesting anything yet." Harry's voice softened. "But I think we owe it to Lily and to Tom to find out what's on this drive." After a moment's hesitation, Sarah nodded. "I know someone who might help. Charlie Peterson runs the computer repair shop on Main Street. He's discreet, helped me recover photos from a corrupted hard drive last year when I thought I'd lost all our family pictures." The next morning, while Lily was at school, Sarah and Harry made their way to Peterson's Electronics, a narrow storefront wedged between a bakery and a dry cleaner's. Charlie Peterson was younger than Harry expected, perhaps in his early 30s, with thick glasses and a quiet manner that suggested he was more comfortable with machines than people. When Sarah explained they needed help accessing a protected drive, carefully omitting any mention of its origins, Charlie hesitated. "If this is corporate data or government stuff, I can't get involved in anything illegal," he said, pushing his glasses up his nose. "It's family photos." Sarah lied smoothly. "My brother's. He had some security concerns before he passed. Military paranoia. You know how it is." Charlie's resistance softened at the mention of a fallen serviceman. "Let me take a look." The drive, it turned out, was encrypted. Charlie explained it would take time to access the content safely, without triggering any deletion protocols that might be embedded in the security. "Come back tomorrow," he suggested. "I'll see what I can do." Meanwhile, Ranger's condition was gradually improving under Dr. Collins's care. The antibiotics had begun to clear his respiratory infection, and a specialized diet was slowly adding weight to his frame. More remarkable was the change in his demeanor each day. He seemed more alert, more present, the fog of pain and neglect lifting to reveal glimpses of the proud military dog he had once been. Sarah, despite her initial reluctance, found herself drawn to the animal. Harry caught her sitting beside Ranger in the afternoon sunlight, gently brushing his coat and speaking to him in low tones. She didn't notice Harry's presence until he deliberately scuffed his shoe against the porch step. "He listens," she said simply, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. "Doesn't offer advice or platitudes, just listens. Dogs are good at that," Harry agreed, lowering himself onto the step with a grunt as his arthritic knee protested, "especially the smart ones." "He reminds me of Tom," Sarah admitted, her brushstrokes never faltering. "That same watchful patience. Like he's gathering intel even when he seems relaxed." Harry nodded, understanding completely. Military dogs and their handlers start to mirror each other after a while. It's why the bond is so strong. Sarah's hand stilled. "I miss him, Harry, every day. The not knowing is the worst part." Before Harry could respond, they were interrupted by the sound of the school bus stopping at the end of the block. Minutes later, Lily burst through the back gate, her backpack bouncing against her narrow shoulders, face alight with the simple joy of finding Ranger exactly where she'd left him. The German shepherd's reaction to Lily's return was equally telling. His ears perked forward, his tail lifted in a tentative wag, and he made a sound somewhere between a whine and a greeting that had Sarah blinking back unexpected tears. That night, the nightmares began. Sarah woke to Lily's terrified screams shortly after midnight. She found her niece tangled in sweat-soaked sheets, thrashing against invisible restraints. "Dad!" Lily cried, still caught in the grip of the dream. "Dad, look out, they're going to—" "Lily, honey, wake up," Sarah urged, gently shaking the child's shoulders. "It's just a dream." Lily's eyes flew open, wild with residual terror. "He was calling for help," she gasped between sobs. "Dad was calling for Ranger, but Ranger couldn't get to him because there were men holding him back and—" "Shh," Sarah soothed, gathering the trembling child into her arms. "It was just a bad dream." A soft whine from the doorway drew their attention. Ranger stood there, ears alert, eyes fixed on Lily with unmistakable concern. Despite Sarah's strict rule about the dog remaining downstairs, he had somehow managed to navigate the staircase on still unsteady legs. "Ranger," Lily hiccuped, extending a hand toward him. To Sarah's surprise, the dog approached cautiously and placed his head on the edge of the bed, precisely within Lily's reach. The child buried her fingers in his fur, and the effect was immediate. Her breathing slowed, her trembling subsided. "He always knows," Lily murmured, her eyes growing heavy again. "Dad said Ranger could smell feelings." Sarah should have sent the dog back downstairs, should have reinforced boundaries. But the peaceful expression on Lily's tear-streaked face stopped her. Instead, she helped Ranger climb onto the foot of the bed, where he settled with a deep sigh, his watchful gaze never leaving Lily's face. "Just for tonight," Sarah whispered, though she wasn't sure if she was speaking to Lily or to herself. The next morning, Charlie Peterson called early. His voice was tight with nervous energy. "You need to come to the shop, now! And don't tell anyone where you're going." Sarah and Harry exchanged alarmed glances across the breakfast table. "What about Lily?" Harry asked after Sarah hung up. "School bus comes in 20 minutes. Dr. Collins is stopping by at lunch to check on Ranger." Sarah chewed her lip, a habit from childhood that emerged only when she was deeply worried. "We should be back by then." Charlie's shop was technically not open yet when they arrived. The closed sign still hanging on the door, blinds drawn against the morning sunlight. He ushered them in quickly, locking the door behind them. "I've been up all night," he said without preamble, leading them to a back room cluttered with computer equipment. Dark circles beneath his eyes testified to the truth of his statement. "This isn't a photo drive, Sarah." "Charlie, He held up a hand, cutting off her explanation. "I don't want to know why you have this or where it came from, but you need to understand what you're holding." He gestured to a monitor where a series of files were displayed. "It's operational data from something called Project Cerberus. Locations, dates, personnel records, and financial transactions. Lots of financial transactions." "What kind of operations?" Harry asked, leaning closer to the screen. Charlie swallowed hard. "The illegal kind. At least, they should be illegal. Weapons sales to groups on international watch lists. Enhanced interrogation sessions conducted on foreign soil. Surveillance of American citizens without warrants." He pushed his glasses up nervously. "If this data is legitimate, someone's running black ops outside of governmental oversight and using Meridian security solutions as a front." Sarah sank into a chair, her face ashen. "Tom was investigating something before he disappeared. He couldn't tell me details, but he was worried. Said he'd stumbled onto something that went all the way to the top." Harry's expression hardened. "Where did these operations take place?" Charlie pointed to a map on the screen. "Multiple sites, but there's a concentration of activity here." His finger indicated a remote location in a supposedly abandoned industrial complex outside of Oak Ridge, the old Westridge manufacturing plant. "That's where Mike found Ranger," Sarah whispered. "Behind the industrial park." Harry straightened up, wincing as his back protested. "We need to take this to the authorities." Charlie laughed, a brittle sound devoid of humor. "Which authorities? If what I'm seeing is accurate, there are names on this list from every branch of government. You take this to the wrong person, you'll disappear faster than your brother did." The gravity of their situation descended like a physical weight. Whatever Tom had discovered, it had cost him dearly, and now the evidence was in their hands, along with a dog who might be the only living witness to what had truly happened. "We need more information before we move," Harry decided finally, "and we need to keep Ranger and Lily safe." "If anyone realizes what we have..." The ringing of Sarah's phone cut through the tense atmosphere. She answered, then froze, her face draining of color. "Slow down, Lily," she said, voice carefully controlled. "What men? Where's Dr. Collins?" Harry moved closer, trying to hear the child's response. "Stay in your room with Ranger," Sarah instructed firmly. "Don't come out, don't answer the door. We're coming home right now." She ended the call, already moving toward the door. "Men in suits at the house, asking about a missing military asset. Dr. Collins is stalling them, but Lily's terrified." They made it back to the house in record time, but the black sedan was already gone from the driveway. They found Dr. Collins in the kitchen, her professional composure visibly shaken. "Meridian Security," she said as soon as they entered. 2 men, very polite, very insistent, said they were conducting a routine recovery of military property believed to be in the area. Her hands trembled slightly as she pushed her hair back. They had Ranger's service number. Wanted to know if I'd treated any large German shepherds recently. What did you tell them? Harry asked sharply. That I'd need to see proper documentation and a court order before discussing any patients. Dr. Collins managed a thin smile. Doctor-patient confidentiality applies to animal patients, too. As far as I'm concerned, they weren't happy, but they left. Lily. Sarah was already moving toward the stairs. In her room with Ranger, I told her not to come down until you got home. They found Lily sitting on her bedroom floor, arms wrapped around Ranger's neck, both watching the door with identical expressions of wary alertness. The German shepherd's posture changed subtly when he saw Harry, a straightening of the spine, a focusing of attention that spoke to his military training. There were men, Lily said, her voice small but steady. They asked about Ranger. Said he was government property that needed to be returned. Sarah knelt beside her niece. They're gone now. Honey, you're safe. Lily's chin lifted in a gesture of defiance that was pure Tom. They'll come back. They want to hurt Ranger again. No one's going to hurt Ranger, Harry promised, his gravelly voice gentle but firm. We're going to make sure of that. As if in response to this declaration, Lily's school backpack began to vibrate. All four humans froze, staring at it as if it might explode. After a moment, Lily cautiously unzipped the outer pocket and withdrew her small phone, a basic model Sarah had given her for emergencies. The screen displayed a text message from an unknown number. Bring the dog to Westridge Industrial Park, Loading Bay 7, midnight. Come alone or people get hurt. Sarah snatched the phone. Horror etched across her features. How did they get your number? This is a private line. It's not even in my name. Harry's expression was grim. They're sending a message. They want us to know they can reach us anywhere. We should call the police, Dr. Sir Collins suggested. But Harry was already shaking his head. And tell them that some private security firm is trying to reclaim their legal property on paper. Meridian owns Ranger. We have no proof of abuse, no proof of any connection to Tom's disappearance. We have the USB drive, Sarah pointed out, which we obtained illegally and can't explain having. Harry countered. No, we need more. We need to understand what we're dealing with before we involve authorities who might be compromised. The conversation was interrupted by a gentle knock at the front door. Everyone tensed, but a glance out the window revealed an unexpected visitor, Ethan Winters, Tom's former teammate, whom Sarah had met only at the memorial service 3 years ago. I was in the area, Ethan explained once invited inside, his handsome face creased with what appeared to be genuine concern. Thought I'd check in, see how you and Lily are doing. He was tall and fit, with the alert posture of a man who had spent years in dangerous situations. His eyes, a striking pale blue, swept the room with military precision, cataloging exits, threats, assets. They widened fractionally when Ranger padded into the room behind Lily. Is that... Ethan began, then stopped himself. Tom's partner, Harry confirmed, watching Ethan's reaction carefully. Lily found him in the park a few days ago. Someone dumped him there to die. Ethan's expression shifted from surprise to something harder, more controlled. May I? He asked, gesturing toward Ranger. The German shepherd watched Ethan approach, his posture neither welcoming nor aggressive, a neutral assessment. When Ethan extended his hand, Ranger sniffed it cautiously before allowing a brief touch to his head. He remembers me, Ethan said softly. We ran training exercises together when Tom's unit was preparing for deployment. He examined Ranger's condition with a professional eye. Who did this to him? Meridian Security Solutions, as far as we can tell, Harry replied, still watching Ethan carefully. They've been sending men around asking questions. Seem very eager to get Ranger back. Something flickered in Ethan's eyes. Recognition, Harry thought, though whether of the name or the situation was unclear. Be careful, Ethan said finally. MSS has connections, government contracts. They can make things very difficult if they want to. Do you know them? Sarah asked directly. Ethan hesitated, then nodded once. They approached me after my discharge. Wanted to hire me as a security consultant. I declined. He straightened up. Decision apparently made. If they're after Ranger, there's a reason. Tom's dog was more than just a bomb sniffer. He was trained for evidence recovery documents, data devices, material samples, the best in the unit, the best in the... The implication hung in the air. Ranger might have been with Tom when he discovered whatever it was that led to his disappearance. Might have been the last to see him alive or the only witness to something even more sinister. What happened to my brother, Ethan? Sarah asked quietly. The real story, not the official line. Ethan's face closed like a shutter. I don't know. We were on separate assignments when he disappeared. All I know is they called off the search too quickly. Said there was conclusive evidence of death, but never shared it with the team. His jaw tightened. It never sat right with me. Before anyone could press further, Lily's phone chimed again. Another message from the unknown number. Midnight. Don't be late. Ethan's eyebrows rose as Sarah showed him the screen. They're making contact. That's unusual. They know where Lily goes to school. They have her private number. Sarah's voice was tight with fear and anger. We're considering our options. Let me help, Ethan offered immediately. Whatever Tom was involved in, he was my friend. I owe him that much. Harry and Sarah exchanged a look, a silent communication passing between them. Trust was a luxury they couldn't afford to extend blindly, but they were desperately outmatched against whatever forces were arrayed against them. We need to get Lily somewhere safe first, Sarah decided. Then we'll figure out our next move. As the adults discussed options, Lily sat quietly beside Ranger, her small hand buried in his fur. The German shepherd's amber eyes remained fixed on Ethan, watchful and unblinking, as if assessing a potential threat or recognizing something the humans had missed. The afternoon stretched into evening, tension building with each passing hour. Plans were made and discarded, options weighed and found wanting. The threat was too nebulous, the enemy too powerful, their understanding too limited. By nightfall, they had settled on a compromise. Lily would stay with Dr. Collins at her home outside of town, protected by the clinic's security system and Collins's former military brother who was visiting for the weekend. Sarah, Harry, and Ethan would investigate the Westridge site, not to surrender Ranger, but to gather intelligence on whoever was threatening them. And Ranger, much to Lily's distress, would remain with her, both for his protection and for hers. I'll come back, Sarah promised, holding her sobbing niece close. We just need to understand what's happening. Don't go, Lily pleaded, clinging to her aunt with desperate strength. They'll take you away like they took Dad. Sarah felt her resolve waver, but Harry's gentle hand on her shoulder steadied her. We'll be careful, she assured Lily. And we'll have Ethan with us. He was in the same unit as your dad. He knows what he's doing. As they prepared to leave, Ranger suddenly growled a low, warning rumble that stopped everyone in their tracks. His attention was fixed on the front window, ears forward, body tense with alertness. Ethan moved to the window, peering cautiously through the blinds. Black SUV, he reported quietly. Parked across the street. 2 men inside. They're watching the house, Harry concluded grimly. Waiting to see what we do. The implied threat hung in the air, changing the parameters of their hastily constructed plan. If Meridian was already surveilling them, any movement would be noticed. Any attempt to split up could put Lily at greater risk. We need a diversion, Ethan decided. Something to draw their attention while you get Lily out the back way to Dr. Collins' car. Harry nodded slowly. I could create a distraction. Lord knows I'm good at making a scene when I need to. Too risky, Sarah objected. If they're dangerous, I'm a Vietnam vet with stage 2 lung cancer. Harry cut her off with a wry smile. What exactly am I saving myself for? Sarah, let me do this for Lily. For Tom. The revelation of his illness landed like a physical blow. Sarah stared at him, understanding dawning in her eyes. The frequent doctor visits Harry had brushed off as old man tune-ups. The increasing shortness of breath he attributed to age and smoking. Harry, you should have told us, she whispered. And have you treating me like I'm made of glass? Not my style. He squared his shoulders. Now, are we doing this or not? The plan came together with military precision. A testament to Harry's and Ethan's training. Harry would create a diversion at the front of the house, a belligerent old man routine complaining loudly about the suspicious vehicle on his street. Meanwhile, Dr. Collins would bring her car to the narrow alley behind the property, where Sarah would slip out with Lily and Ranger. Ethan positioned himself by the back door, hand resting casually near his waistband where Sarah suspected he carried a concealed weapon. His pale blue eyes had taken on a focused intensity that was both reassuring and unnerving. 5 minutes, he said, checking his watch. Then we move. Harry nodded, straightening his jacket with a dignity that belied the seriousness of the situation. See you on the other side. With that parting remark, he walked out the front door and began his performance. Even through closed windows, they could hear Harry's voice rising in righteous indignation. What in God's name are you fellas doing parked outside my neighbor's house? This is a residential neighborhood, not a surveillance post. Sarah ushered Lily toward the back door, Ranger limping determinedly beside them. The German shepherd seemed to understand the gravity of the situation. He made no sound, staying close to Lily's side, his eyes alert despite his weakened condition. Ready, Ethan whispered, peering through the blinds at the darkened backyard. Sarah nodded, gripping Lily's small hand tightly in her own. The soft purr of Dr. Collins's engine signaled their moment. Ethan eased the door open, scanning the area before motioning them forward. They moved swiftly across the yard, Sarah half carrying Lily, while Ranger followed with surprising agility given his condition. They had almost reached the gate when floodlights suddenly illuminated the yard. Bright as midday, A voice called out from the darkness beyond the light. "Stop right there! Ms. Anderson." Sarah froze, instinctively pulling Lily behind her. Ranger growled, low and threatening despite his weakened state. Two men in dark suits stepped into the pool of light. The taller one smiled thinly, his expression devoid of warmth. Richard Sterling, Director of Special Assets at Meridian Security Solutions. He gestured toward Ranger. "I believe you have property that belongs to us." "He doesn't belong to you," Lily cried, clinging to Ranger's collar. "He's my dad's dog." Sterling's gaze flicked dismissively over the child before returning to Sarah. "Your brother's military working dog was legally transferred to MSS after Captain Anderson's unfortunate accident. We've been trying to locate this asset for quite some time." "Asset?" Sarah's voice dripped with contempt. "He's a living creature that you abandoned to starve on the streets." Sterling's expression remained impassive. "There seems to be some confusion. MSS has no record of this animal being released from our facility. However, we're prepared to overlook the theft of government property if you cooperate now." The back door banged open as Ethan emerged, his posture radiating controlled aggression. "This isn't government property, Sterling. It's a retired military working dog with documented evidence of abuse. Walk away while you still can." Recognition flickered across Sterling's face. "Winters, I heard you were back stateside." His smile tightened. "Still playing the hero? I thought you'd learned your lesson after the Kandahar incident." Tension crackled between the two men, history and hostility evident in their stances. Whatever the Kandahar incident had been, it clearly represented unfinished business. The standoff was interrupted by the arrival of Harry, being half-dragged around the side of the house by Sterling's partner. The old veteran had a rapidly swelling eye and a trickle of blood from his split lip, but his expression remained defiant. "Sorry, folks," he wheezed, struggling to catch his breath. "Turns out my diversion wasn't as diverting as we'd hoped." Sterling sighed, a sound of administrative annoyance rather than genuine emotion. "This is becoming unnecessarily complicated. We simply want what belongs to us, the dog, and any accessories he might have been carrying." The deliberate emphasis on accessories sent a chill down Sarah's spine. They knew about the USB drive. "There's nothing to negotiate," Ethan stated flatly. "The dog stays with the family. Any issue you have can be addressed through proper legal channels." Sterling checked his watch with theatrical patience. "I had hoped to resolve this quietly, but I see we'll need to be more direct." He nodded to his partner, who immediately produced a document from his jacket. "This is a federal order authorizing the immediate seizure of military asset K97642, also known as Ranger, currently being held illegally by civilians without proper authorization." He held out the paper, which bore official-looking seals and signatures. "Obstruction will result in criminal charges." Sarah felt sick. They had prepared for threats, even violence, but not for the crushing weight of legal bureaucracy. If the document was legitimate, and she had no way to verify it wasn't, they had no standing to resist. Dr. Collins chose that moment to step around the corner, her medical bag in hand. "I'd like to see that order, please." Her voice carried the calm authority of someone accustomed to emergency situations. Sterling's partner hesitated, then handed her the document. Dr. Collins examined it carefully, her expression neutral. "This order," she finally said, "requires the dog to be in good health upon transfer. As Ranger's veterinarian of record, I cannot in good conscience certify his condition as stable for transport." She met Sterling's gaze without flinching. "He's suffering from severe malnutrition, respiratory infection, and possible internal injuries. Moving him would constitute animal cruelty under Virginia state law." Sterling's face hardened. "We have our own veterinary staff, who will need my transfer records, which I cannot complete without a full examination and stabilization period." Dr. Collins smiled thinly. "Unless you'd prefer I contact the state veterinary board about rushed removal of a critically ill animal, I'm sure they'd be very interested in MSS's animal welfare practices." It was a temporary roadblock at best, but Sterling clearly recognized the potential for unwanted attention. His jaw worked as he considered his options. 24 hours, he finally conceded. "The animal remains here under supervision of Dr. Collins. No one leaves the premises. My men will maintain perimeter security to ensure everyone's safety." The threat beneath the offer of protection was unmistakable. Before anyone could respond, the tense standoff was shattered by the arrival of a local news van, its lights illuminating the scene as a reporter and cameraman hustled up the driveway. "Ms. Anderson," called the reporter, a young woman with professionally concerned features. "We received an anonymous tip about a military hero dog being rescued from abuse. Could we get a statement?" Sterling's expression froze in a rictus of controlled fury. The sudden media presence had changed the equation dramatically. Whatever Meridian's reach, they clearly preferred to operate without public scrutiny. "This is private property," Sterling began. But the camera was already rolling, capturing his attempt to intervene. The reporter's eyes widened with professional excitement at the unexpected tension. "And you are, sir. Do you represent the organization that abandoned this decorated military dog?" Sterling's partner muttered something urgently in his ear. After a moment of visible calculation, Sterling forced a smile. "There seems to be a misunderstanding. We'll be in touch. Ms. Anderson." With a curt nod to his partner, he retreated toward their vehicle, leaving the field to the media and momentarily to Sarah and her unlikely allies. The reporter, sensing a story, descended on them with eager questions about Ranger's rescue and condition. Sarah, thinking quickly, positioned Lily and Ranger in the gentle glow of the porch light, a perfect tableau of a child reunited with her father's faithful companion. "This is Ranger," Lily explained to the camera with unexpected poise. "He was my dad's partner in the military. He saved lives and protected soldiers. But someone hurt him and left him all alone." Her small hand rested protectively on Ranger's bony shoulder. "We found him, and now we're helping him get better." The reporter's expression softened with genuine emotion. "And your father, is he here to see this reunion?" Lily's composure wavered. "My dad disappeared on a mission 3 years ago. They said he died, but they never found him." Her chin lifted in a gesture of defiance that tore at Sarah's heart. "Ranger is the only part of him I have left." It was television gold, the wounded military dog, the fatherless child, the mysterious circumstances. The reporter asked if Ranger would demonstrate any of his military training. clearly hoping for a dramatic display of his former capabilities. Lily looked uncertainly at Harry, who nodded encouragement. "He's still really sick," she explained to the reporter. "But maybe—" She turned to Ranger and made a hand signal that Sarah had never seen before, a quick gesture at shoulder height followed by a palm extended downward. To everyone's surprise, Ranger immediately dropped to a lying position, his eyes fixed attentively on Lily. "Dad taught me some of the commands," Lily explained, her face brightening with pride. "Ranger remembers them all." The cameraman zoomed in on Ranger's scarred but dignified face, capturing the intelligence in his amber eyes. It was compelling footage, a visual testament to the bond between handler and military dog, one that had survived separation, abuse, and the passage of years. As the interview concluded, Dr. Collins discreetly checked her phone. Her eyes widened slightly before she composed her features. "We should get Ranger inside," she suggested, guiding Lily and the dog toward the door. "He needs his medication and rest." Once inside, with the reporter and cameraman packing up their equipment on the front lawn, Dr. Collins showed them her screen. "Someone just sent me this." It was a news article from earlier that day, detailing a congressional inquiry into private contractors handling retired military working dogs. Meridian Security Solutions was specifically named, with allegations of misappropriation of funds intended for canine retirement care. "The timing isn't coincidental," Harry observed, scanning the article. "Someone wanted this story to break now." "Someone who knew we found Ranger," Sarah added, the implications settling over the group like a physical weight. Ethan's expression was unreadable. "Sterling's not going to back off because of a news crew or a congressional inquiry. If anything, he's more dangerous now. Whatever Ranger knows, whatever was on that USB drive, it's important enough to risk public exposure." "Then we need to understand what we're dealing with," Sarah decided, her fear transforming into determination. "Charlie said there were coordinates on the drive locations of operations. One of them was the Westridge Industrial Park." "Where Mike found Ranger," Lily supplied, her small face solemn as she stroked the German Shepherd's head. "We can't just walk into a Meridian facility," Dr. Collins cautioned. "If they're involved in what you suspect, it would be suicide." Harry's weathered face creased in thought. "We don't need to go inside. Just close enough to gather information, confirm it's an active site, see what kind of security they have, maybe get some photos." "Reconnaissance," Ethan nodded. "Professional assessment overtaking personal caution." "I can handle that." "Not alone," Sarah insisted. "We stay together." As they debated strategy, Lily sat quietly with Ranger, seemingly lost in her own thoughts. Finally, she spoke up, her voice small but steady. "Ranger knows the way." The adults paused, turning to her with varying expressions of confusion. "What do you mean, honey?" Sarah asked gently. "Sarah, in my dream," Lily explained, her fingers never ceasing their gentle stroking of Ranger's fur. "Dad was calling for help from somewhere dark. Ranger was trying to find him, but men were holding him back." Her eyes, too old for her young face, met Sarah's. "I think Ranger knows where Dad is." The simple conviction in her voice sent a shiver through the room. Children's intuition, magical thinking born of grief and hope, or something more concrete. Ranger had been with Tom when he disappeared. If he had somehow escaped from wherever they were holding his handler— "It's not impossible," Ethan said slowly, breaking the silence. "Military working dogs are trained to return to their last known position if separated from their handlers. It's basic protocol. And if Tom managed to give him a specific command before they were separated," Harry added, warming to the theory, "Ranger might have been trying to complete his mission all this time." Dr. Collins looked skeptical. "After 3 years with his injuries and condition, you don't understand what these dogs are capable of," Ethan replied, a new respect in his voice as he regarded Ranger. "I've seen handlers give their dogs final commands with their dying breaths, and watched those dogs complete the mission despite their own injuries." Sarah knelt beside Lily, meeting her niece's eyes directly. "Do you really believe Ranger knows where to find your dad?" Lily nodded without hesitation. "He was trying to tell us, but we didn't understand." The weight of the child's conviction hung in the air, a fragile hope that none of the adults dared dismiss outright. If there was even the slightest chance— "Then we follow Ranger," Sarah decided, standing up with newfound resolve. "But first, we need to make sure Sterling and his men can't interfere." The local news segment featuring Lily and Ranger aired on the 11 o'clock broadcast and spread like wildfire across social media overnight. By morning, #Justice for Ranger was trending, accompanied by the heart-wrenching image of the emaciated German shepherd beside the solemn-faced child. Veterans groups and animal welfare organizations issued statements condemning the treatment of military working dogs, and reporters began digging into Meridian Security Solutions government contracts. It was exactly the cover they needed. With public attention focused on the house, Sterling and his men were forced to maintain a more discreet surveillance position, giving Sarah and the others room to maneuver. Dr. Collins's brother Marcus, a former Marine with the build of a linebacker and the quiet vigilance of a career soldier, arrived to provide additional security, allowing them to implement the next phase of their hastily constructed plan. Using the media interest as a shield, they granted a follow-up interview to the local station, carefully staging it in the living room, to give the impression that they intended to remain at the house indefinitely. Meanwhile, Dr. Collins prepared Ranger for what would likely be a physically demanding journey, administering antibiotics and pain medication that would keep him functional without dulling his senses. "He's not ready for this," she warned as she checked his vitals. "In any normal circumstances, I'd prescribe at least another week of rest before light activity." "These aren't normal circumstances," Harry reminded her grimly. "And we're running out of time." Sarah watched the careful preparations with a growing sense of dread. The initial surge of determination that had carried her through the confrontation with Sterling was fading, replaced by the cold reality of what they were attempting. They were civilians, except for Ethan and Marcus, going up against a professional organization with resources, training, and a clear willingness to eliminate obstacles. And they were doing it all on the strength of a child's conviction and a wounded dog's uncertain memories. "Are we crazy?" she asked Harry quietly as they packed essential supplies into nondescript backpacks. "Following a dog to find a man who's been missing for 3 years?" Harry's weathered hands paused in their methodical work. "Maybe," he admitted, "but I've been called worse things than crazy in my time." He glanced toward Lily, who was helping Dr. Collins prepare a special vest for Ranger that would provide support while allowing him freedom of movement. "Sometimes faith is all you've got. Sarah, Sometimes it's enough. As dusk approached, they set their plan in motion. Marcus and Dr. Collins remained at the house with strict instructions to maintain the appearance of normalcy, lights on in the usual rooms, regular movement past windows, the television tuned to usual programs. They would report that Sarah had taken Lily and Ranger to a specialist veterinary hospital in Richmond for advanced treatment, buying at least a few hours before Sterling realized they had slipped away. Sarah, Lily, Harry, and Ethan departed through a neighbor's connecting yard, using the gathering darkness for cover. Ranger moved slowly but deliberately, his newfound purpose seeming to lend him strength. They had rigged his support vest with a small GPS tracker, not to follow whatever path he might choose, but to ensure they could find him if they became separated. "Remember," Ethan cautioned as they reached the designated meeting point where his nondescript sedan waited. "We're just doing reconnaissance. We observe, we gather information, we retreat and formulate a proper plan." Sarah nodded, but she noticed he avoided meeting Lily's eyes as he spoke. They all knew that if by some miracle they did find evidence that Tom was alive, no force on earth would be sufficient to make them leave without him. The drive to Westridge Industrial Park was tense with anticipation and fear. Ranger sat in the back seat between Sarah and Lily, his head raised, nose working constantly as if sifting through the air for familiar scents. As they approached the outer perimeter of the sprawling complex, Ethan killed the headlights and navigated by moonlight, eventually pulling into an overgrown access road half a mile from the main entrance. "We go on foot from here," he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper despite the isolation. "Stay close, stay quiet, and if I give the signal to retreat, no arguments." They moved through the underbrush like shadows, Ethan in the lead, followed by Sarah and Lily with Ranger and Harry bringing up the rear. The old industrial park was a patchwork of abandoned warehouses and manufacturing facilities, most dark and decrepit, their windows broken and loading docks empty. But as they crested a small rise, a section of the complex stood in stark contrast, a cluster of buildings surrounded by a high fence, lights illuminating a parking area where several vehicles were still present despite the late hour. "That's the MSS facility," Ethan confirmed, surveying the site through compact binoculars. "Security cameras on the perimeter, guard station at the entrance. Looks like they've retrofitted the old Westridge Electronics building." "What's the plan?" Harry asked, his breathing labored from the uphill trek. Ethan frowned, studying the layout. "We circuit the perimeter, staying beyond camera range. Look for blind spots, access points, security patterns, standard recon." But Ranger had other ideas. The German shepherd suddenly tensed, his attention locked on something beyond their position. Before anyone could react, he pulled away from Lily's hold and began moving with surprising speed toward the eastern edge of the complex, away from the illuminated section. "Ranger." "No," Lily called in an urgent whisper. But the dog was already putting distance between them, moving with the purposeful trot of an animal with a clear destination. "Stay with Ethan," Sarah ordered, and took off after Ranger before anyone could stop her. She caught up to him at the edge of a smaller, detached building some distance from the main facility. It appeared to be an old maintenance shed, its corrugated metal walls rusted and bowed with age. Ranger circled it once, nose to the ground, then stopped at a padlocked door, pawing insistently at the ground. By the time the others caught up, Sarah was examining the lock with the flashlight from her phone, keeping the beam carefully shielded. "It's active," she reported, indicating a small electronic keypad beside the conventional padlock. "Someone's using this place." Ethan studied the setup with professional assessment. "It's a secondary security system. Redundant. Whatever's in there. They don't want it found." "Can you get us in?" Harry asked. Ethan hesitated, weighing risk against potential reward. "Maybe, but it would likely trigger a silent alarm. We'd have minutes at most before security responded." Lily had knelt beside Ranger, her small hand buried in the thick fur at his neck. "He knows Dad is here," she said with absolute conviction. "Look at him." Indeed, Ranger's behavior had changed dramatically. Gone was the cautious, pained movement of a recovering animal. He stood alert, muscled, tensed, staring at the door with an intensity that was almost palpable. When he whined a soft, urgent sound, the hair on Sarah's arm stood on end. "We need to get inside," she decided, surprising herself with her own certainty. Ethan looked torn, his training warring with his loyalty to Tom. "If we trigger an alarm, we're compromised. All of us, including Lily." "I'm not afraid," Lily declared, though her small hand trembled where it rested on Ranger's back. "This isn't about being brave, kiddo," Harry said gently. "It's about being smart. If we get caught here—" He didn't need to finish the thought. They all understood the stakes. Sterling and Meridian had already demonstrated their willingness to operate outside the law. If they were found trespassing on MSS property, there would be consequences far beyond legal prosecution. As they debated their next move, Ranger suddenly stiffened, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Everyone froze, listening intently to the night sounds around them. At first, Sarah heard nothing unusual, just the distant hum of the facility's generators, the rustle of leaves in the breeze. Then came the unmistakable crunch of footsteps on gravel. Approaching from the direction of the main compound, Ethan motioned them urgently toward a cluster of overgrown bushes, the only available cover in the immediate vicinity. They barely made it into hiding before a beam of light swept the area, accompanied by the sound of a radio crackling with static. "Perimeter check, Sector 7, a male voice reported. "All clear." The security guard passed within 15 feet of their position, close enough that Sarah could see the Meridian logo on his uniform and the holstered weapon at his hip. Ranger remained perfectly still beside Lily, his training overriding his instinct to react to the stranger. Only when the guard had completed his circuit and returned to the main facility did they dare to breathe normally again. "We need to leave," Ethan insisted, no longer bothering to mask the urgency in his voice. "Now, before the next patrol." But Ranger had other ideas. As soon as the guard was safely out of sight, the German shepherd moved back to the door, this time placing his front paws against it and whining with greater insistence. "He's trying to tell us something," Lily whispered, her face pale in the moonlight. Harry moved closer to the shed, examining it with narrowed eyes. "Look at the foundation," he said suddenly, pointing to where the corrugated metal met the concrete base. "There's fresh dirt here. Someone's been digging recently." Ethan joined him, running his fingers along the disturbed earth. "And these marks on the door, someone's been in and out multiple times in the last few days. The rust pattern is broken." A cold certainty settled in Sarah's chest. Whatever was in that shed, it was crucial to understanding Tom's disappearance, and based on Ranger's behavior, It might even be Tom himself. The thought crystallized into terrible clarity. What if Tom wasn't dead? What if he had been held prisoner all this time? Just miles from where his daughter grew up without him. "We have to get inside," she repeated, her voice hardening with resolve. "Whatever it takes." Ethan stared at her for a long moment, then nodded once. Decision made. "Get ready to move fast," he instructed, already reaching for tools concealed in his jacket. "Once I trigger this lock, we'll have maybe 5 minutes before someone responds." As he worked on bypassing the security system, Sarah knelt beside Lily, gripping her shoulders gently but firmly. "If anything happens, anything at all, you run, as fast as you can, back to the road. Do you understand?" Lily's eyes, so like her father's, met Sarah's without flinching. "I'm not leaving without Dad," she said simply. "Or Ranger." Before Sarah could insist, there was a soft click as the electronic lock disengaged. Ethan had the padlock open seconds later, his movements quick and practiced. "Ready?" he asked, hand on the door. They nodded, even Lily, her small face set with determination beyond her years. Ethan pulled the door open, and the stale, dank air that rushed out carried a scent that made Ranger whine and push forward eagerly. They followed, Ethan's shielded flashlight illuminating a narrow set of stairs leading down into darkness. What awaited them below would change everything. The stairs descended into a concrete bunker that had clearly been retrofitted from an old maintenance sublevel. The air was thick with dampness and the metallic tang of industrial cleansers. But beneath those scents lurked something more disturbing, the unmistakable odor of long-term human confinement. Ranger led the way, his movements now urgent and purposeful despite his weakened condition. The narrow corridor at the bottom of the stairs stretched into darkness, punctuated by the faint glow of emergency lighting. 3 doors lined the left wall, heavy steel with small observation windows set at eye level. The sight sent a chill through Sarah. These weren't storage rooms or maintenance areas. They were cells. "My God," Harry whispered, his gravelly voice barely audible. "What is this place?" Ethan's expression was grim as he checked the first door, shining his light through the observation window. "Empty," he reported, moving to the second. Also clear. Ranger had already reached the third door, the furthest from the stairs. He sat before it, ears forward, and let out a soft whine not of pain or distress, but of recognition. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs as she approached, through the window. Ethan's light revealed a small Spartan cell containing a narrow cot, a stainless steel toilet, and a sink. What caught her breath, however, was the figure huddled in the corner, a man with a tangled beard and matted hair, his once powerful frame now gaunt from prolonged captivity. "Tom," she whispered, pressing her hand against the cold metal. The figure stirred, raising his head slowly, as if the movement required immense effort. His eyes, sunken in their sockets, squinted against the unaccustomed light. But they were unmistakably her brother's eyes, the same warm brown that Lily had inherited, now dulled by suffering, but still alert, still present. "It's him," Sarah choked out, tears blurring her vision. "It's really him." Lily pushed forward, standing on tiptoes to peer through the window. "Dad," she called, her small voice cracking. "Daddy." Inside the cell, Tom Anderson struggled to his feet, disbelief and desperate hope battling across his haggard features. "Lily." His voice was a hoarse rasp, as if he'd long ago stopped using it for anything beyond basic survival. "Sarah." Ethan was already examining the door, his focused professionalism momentarily overtaken by shock. "Electronic lock, keycard access," he muttered, fingers tracing the mechanism. "I can't bypass this one without proper equipment." "There has to be a way," Sarah insisted, unwilling to accept that they'd found Tom only to leave him imprisoned. "We can't just wait," Harry interrupted, pointing to a small box mounted on the wall beside the row of cells. "That's a fire suppression override. Standard in below-ground facilities in case of emergency. It releases all secured doors to allow evacuation." Ethan examined it quickly. "Manual activation. No electronic bypass needed." He glanced at his watch. "But it will definitely trigger alarms." "We'll have minutes. Maybe less." "Do it," Sarah ordered, her mind already racing ahead to their escape. They'd need to support Tom, who was clearly weakened from his long confinement. They'd need to avoid security patrols, make it back to the car. "Wait." Lily's small voice cut through her racing thoughts. "There's somebody else." She was pointing to something they'd overlooked, a fourth door at the very end of the corridor, partially obscured by shadows. This one was different from the others, its observation window covered from the inside with what appeared to be paper. Ranger had noticed it too. He moved away from Tom's cell, approaching the mysterious door with cautious interest. "We don't have time," Ethan warned, his hand hovering over the emergency release. "Security could check this place any minute." "We can't leave someone behind," Lily insisted with the simple moral clarity of childhood. "It's not right." Harry nodded, already moving toward the fourth door. "I'll check it. You get Tom." As Ethan activated the emergency release, the metallic clank of locks disengaging echoed through the corridor. Red warning lights began to pulse along the ceiling, accompanied by a low, insistent alarm that would surely bring security running. Sarah yanked open Tom's cell door, rushing inside with Lily close behind. Her brother stood swaying on unsteady legs, his eyes wide with disbelief as Ranger pushed past the others to reach him, whining with barely contained emotion. "Ranger," Tom whispered, sinking to his knees and burying his face in the dog's fur. "You found them. Good boy. Good boy." There was no time for a proper reunion. Tom was alarmingly weak, his movements slow and uncoordinated after years of confinement. Ethan took most of his weight, supporting him as they emerged from the cell. "What about the other door?" Lily asked, refusing to leave without checking. Harry was already there, peering through a gap where the paper covering had peeled away from the window. "Christ almighty," he muttered, then raised his voice. "Ethan, we need you here. Now." Inside the fourth cell lay a man whose face Sarah didn't recognize, though the military bearing was unmistakable even in his weakened state. Unlike Tom, this prisoner was handcuffed to the bed frame, an IV line running into his arm from a medical stand beside him. "Wilson," Tom croaked, recognition flaring in his sunken eyes. "My spotter. They told me he was dead." Ethan assessed the situation quickly. "He's sedated," he reported after checking the man's pulse. "But alive. Handcuffs need a key, though." "Search the guard station," Harry suggested, pointing to a small alcove near the stairs they'd passed on their way in. Has to be something there. Sarah ran to the alcove, frantically searching drawers and cabinets. She found a ring of keys in the top desk drawer, along with something unexpected, a file folder labeled Anderson T. Extraction Protocol. She grabbed both, racing back to the others as the alarm continued its ominous pulsing. Ethan quickly located the correct key for the handcuffs, freeing Wilson's limp form. "I can carry him," Ethan decided, handing Tom off to Harry and Sarah before hoisting the unconscious man over his shoulder in a fireman's carry. "But we need to move. Now." The ascent up the stairs was painfully slow. Tom struggled with each step, his muscles atrophied from years of confinement. Ranger stayed close to his side, as if offering support through sheer proximity. When they finally reached the door, Ethan cautiously checked outside before motioning them forward. "Clear for now, but they'll be coming," he warned. "We need to reach the tree line before they—" The sudden glare of approaching headlights cut him off. A vehicle was speeding toward them from the main complex, its high beams illuminating the area in harsh white light. "Run!" Ethan ordered, already moving toward the cover of the trees with Wilson's unconscious form bouncing against his back. "Don't stop for anything." They fled across the open ground, desperation lending speed to their movements. Tom stumbled repeatedly, but Sarah and Harry kept him upright, half dragging him toward safety. Lily ran ahead with Ranger, the dog limping but determined, leading them toward the densest part of the surrounding forest. Behind them, the vehicle skidded to a stop. Doors slammed, and voices called out, followed by the unmistakable sound of weapons being readied. "Halt! Security! Stay where you are!" They kept running. The tree line was only 30 yards away, then 20, then 10. A shot cracked through the night, splintering bark from a tree trunk just ahead of them. Warning fire, not yet aiming to kill. But the message was clear. The next shots would be deadlier. Just as they reached the first trees, Ranger suddenly veered left, barking sharply, the first vocal command he'd given since Lily found him. The unexpected sound was so authoritative that they followed instinctively, changing course to parallel the tree line rather than plunging deeper into the woods. It saved their lives. Seconds later, bright lights flooded the forest where they would have been, accompanied by the sound of additional security personnel crashing through the underbrush. Ranger led them to a drainage culvert, partially hidden by overgrown vegetation, a concrete tunnel large enough for them to move through in a crouch, channeling rainwater from the facility to a nearby creek. The dog's military training had identified the perfect escape route, one that wouldn't appear on standard security maps. They crawled through the damp darkness, emerging nearly a quarter-mile from the facility, well beyond the immediate search perimeter. From there, Ethan guided them through a circuitous route back toward their vehicle, carefully avoiding roads and open areas where they might be spotted. By the time they reached the car, Tom was barely conscious, the exertion of escape having depleted what little strength he had. They arranged him in the back seat with his head on Lily's lap, while Harry took the unconscious Wilson, and Ranger squeezed into the footwell. "We can't go back to the house," Ethan said as he started the engine, keeping the headlights off until they were well away from the industrial park. "It'll be the first place they look." "Dr. Collins has a cabin," Sarah suggested, her voice tight with stress and lingering fear, "near the Blue Ridge Mountains." "Her family's hunting property. No one would connect it to us." Ethan nodded, taking a series of random turns to ensure they weren't being followed before finally heading west toward the mountains. In the back seat, Lily stroked her father's matted hair, tears streaming silently down her face. "You found me," Tom whispered, his cracked lips forming the words with obvious effort. "How? Ranger brought us to you," Lily explained, her small hand moving from her father's hair to the dog's head. He never forgot. Tom's hand, skeletal, the nails broken and dirty, reached out to touch Ranger's fur. "Good boy," he murmured again, the simple praise carrying the weight of years of separation and unwavering loyalty. "Best partner I ever had," as they drove through the night, putting distance between themselves and Meridian's facility. Sarah finally had a chance to examine the file she'd grabbed from the guard station. What she found inside confirmed their worst fears and wildest hopes. The document detailed extraction protocol for prisoner 37A. Thomas Anderson plans to move him to an offshore facility within the next 48 hours. But more shocking were the reasons listed for his continued detention. Subject possesses actionable intelligence on Operation Black Star. Maintains knowledge of document cache location despite enhanced interrogation. Recommended for terminal processing following final extraction attempt. Terminal processing. The clinical euphemism couldn't disguise its meaning. They had been planning to kill Tom once they'd extracted whatever information he still possessed. But there was more. Attached to the main document was a medical report indicating that Tom had been subjected to various cognitive enhancement protocols during his captivity drugs designed to make him more susceptible to questioning. The most recent notes expressed frustration that despite these measures, he continued to resist providing key information about something called the Black Star files. "Tom?" Sarah said softly, turning in her seat to face her brother. "What is Operation Black Star? What were they trying to get from you?" Tom's eyes, though clouded with exhaustion, sharpened momentarily. "Evidence," he whispered. "War crimes, human trafficking. Politicians involved, tried to expose them. They came after me." His gaze drifted to Ranger. Gave the files to him. Special compartment in his tactical vest. But they took him before he could complete the mission. The pieces were falling into place. Tom had discovered something damning about Meridian's operations. Something serious enough that they'd risked imprisoning an American soldier rather than allowing the information to become public. He'd entrusted the evidence to Ranger, but they'd been separated before the dog could deliver it. The USB drive, Harry realized, his weathered face pale in the dim light of the car. That's what was on it. That's why they wanted Ranger back so badly. And why they tried to eliminate him when they couldn't find the drive, Ethan added grimly. Dead dogs tell no tales. But Ranger had survived. Against all odds, he'd endured starvation, abuse, and abandonment, clinging to life with the same tenacity that had made him an elite military working dog. And when fate finally reunited him with his handler's daughter, he'd completed his mission at last, leading them not just to the evidence, but to Tom himself, as the full weight of what they'd discovered settled over the group. Lily's small voice broke the silence, giving words to what they were all thinking. "They're going to come after us, aren't they?" she asked, her eyes too knowing for her 8 years. "The bad men from Meridian." Sarah wished she could offer reassurance, some comforting fiction that would ease the child's fear. But Lily had earned the truth. "Yes," she said simply. "They will." "Then we need to be ready," Lily declared, her arm protectively encircling her father's shoulders. "We need to fight back." From his position at her feet, Ranger lifted his head as if in agreement. Despite his injuries and exhaustion, there was a new strength in his amber eyes, the unwavering resolve of a soldier who had found his purpose once more. The battle was far from over, but for the first time in 3 years, they faced it together. Dr. Collins's family cabin stood nestled among towering pines, its weathered logs and stone chimney blending into the mountainside as if it had grown there naturally. By the time they arrived, dawn was breaking over the Blue Ridge Mountains, painting the sky in watercolor streaks of pink and gold. The beauty of it struck Sarah as almost surreal after the nightmare of the underground cells and their desperate escape. Marcus and Dr. Collins were already waiting, having taken a different route after receiving Sarah's cryptic phone call. Their expressions registered shock as they helped carry Tom and the still unconscious Wilson into the cabin. "Oh my God," Dr. Collins whispered, her medical training immediately kicking in as she assessed Tom's condition. "He needs a hospital." "No hospitals," Ethan countered firmly. "They'll be watching emergency rooms within a 100-mile radius. We need to treat them here." For the next several hours, the cabin became a makeshift field hospital. Dr. Collins worked tirelessly, starting IVs for both men to address severe dehydration, treating numerous infections and wounds, all while monitoring their vital signs with portable equipment Marcus had brought from the clinic. Wilson eventually regained consciousness, disoriented and combative until Tom's voice cut through his confusion. "Stand down, Sergeant. You're among friends." The simple command penetrated years of fog and fear. Wilson's eyes, a startling blue against his dirt-streaked face, focused for the first time. "Captain, is that really you?" "It's me," Tom confirmed, his own voice stronger after receiving fluids and medication. "We made it out." While Dr. Collins tended to the men, Sarah, Harry, and Ethan gathered around the cabin's scarred oak table, spreading out the documents from the facility alongside printed copies of the files from the USB drive that Charlie had extracted. "It's bigger than we thought," Harry said grimly, arranging photos and documents in chronological order. "Meridian wasn't just misappropriating funds for military dog retirement. They were using the program as cover for black ops that Congress never approved assassinations, extraordinary renditions, weapons sales to sanctioned groups." "And Tom discovered it," Sarah added, piecing together the narrative from fragments of information. "He was gathering evidence to blow the whistle." Ethan's expression was troubled. "Which means Sterling and his people aren't just worried about bad press or congressional hearings. They're facing potential treason charges. There are names in these files, senators, Pentagon officials, corporate executives who authorized operations that violated a dozen international laws." "So what do we do?" Sarah asked, the enormity of their situation settling over her like a physical weight. "We can't hide in these mountains forever. We need leverage," Ethan decided after a long moment. "Something to keep them at bay while we figure out how to get this information to the right people who aren't compromised." The conversation paused as Lily entered the room, Ranger limping faithfully at her side. The child looked exhausted but determined, her small face set with a resolve beyond her years. "Dad's asking for you," she told Sarah. "He says he remembers something important." They found Tom propped up on the cabin's old sofa, his gaunt face already showing subtle improvements from Dr. Collins's care. The shadows beneath his eyes remained, but there was clarity in his gaze that hadn't been there before the fog of captivity and medication beginning to lift. "The evidence in those files," he began without preamble, his voice still rough but stronger. "It's only part of what I gathered. The most damaging material: video recordings, financial transfers, signed orders is stored on a secure server. I was the only one with access codes. That's why they kept you alive." Harry realized. They needed those codes. Tom nodded, wincing at the movement. "They tried everything to make me talk. Drugs, pain, isolation. They even faked news reports about Lily being hurt to break me." His eyes sought his daughter, filled with a father's anguish. "I almost gave in then. Almost." Lily moved to his side, her small hand finding his. "It's okay, Dad. I'm okay." Tom squeezed her fingers gently. "The server is set to release everything automatically if I don't enter a reset code every 6 months. It's been over 3 years now. The information is already out there, in the hands of journalists and watchdog groups around the world." The implications of his words hung in the air. If Tom was right, Meridian's desperate efforts to silence him had been futile. The truth he'd risked everything to expose was already beyond their reach. "We need to find out if the information was actually released," Ethan said, already reaching for his phone. "If it was, we can use that as insurance. They can't touch us without risking further exposure." As Ethan stepped outside to make calls to trusted contacts, Sarah sat beside her brother, taking in the changes 3 years of captivity had wrought. The Tom she remembered had been robust and confident, his laugh quick and his eyes bright with humor. This man was a shadow of that version, thin to the point of gauntness, movements hesitant, gaze haunted by experiences she could barely imagine. Yet, beneath the damage, she could still see her brother. In the way he spoke to Lily, gentle despite his weariness. In the way his hand automatically reached for Ranger whenever the dog came near, the connection between handler and military working dog unbroken despite years of separation. "I never gave up on you," she told him softly. "Not really. Even when they told us you were gone, something inside me couldn't accept it." Tom's cracked lips formed a ghost of his old smile. Stubbornness runs in the family. Outside, the mountain morning had blossomed into full daylight. Sunlight streamed through the cabin's windows, illuminating motes of dust that danced in the air like tiny constellations. The peaceful scene stood in stark contrast to the dangerous reality they faced. Ethan returned, his expression tense but hopeful. "I've got confirmation. 3 major news outlets received data dumps from an anonymous source 2 years ago, material exactly matching what Tom described. They've been investigating quietly, building cases, verifying sources. And," Harry prompted, "the Washington Post is planning to publish the first piece next week. They've been coordinating with federal prosecutors who aren't tied to the people named in the files." A weight seemed to lift from Tom's shoulders. "Then it worked," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It was worth it." Ranger, who had been resting at Lily's feet, suddenly raised his head, ears alert. A low growl rumbled in his chest, the warning of a military dog sensing approaching danger. Ethan moved to the window, carefully peering out without disturbing the curtain. "Vehicle coming up the access road," he reported, his voice dropping to a tactical whisper. "Black SUV. Looks like Meridian." They had been found. But as they hastily prepared for confrontation, Ethan checking the hunting rifles stored in the cabin's gun safe, Marcus moving Tom and Wilson to the more defensible back bedroom, an unexpected sound cut through the tension, more vehicles approaching, but these with flashing lights and the distinctive markings of federal law enforcement. "FBI," Harry confirmed, peering through a side window. "At least 3 vehicles. They're intercepting the SUV." They watched in disbelief as Sterling and 2 Meridian operatives were removed from their vehicle at gunpoint, forced to kneel on the gravel driveway with their hands behind their heads. A tall woman in a dark suit approached the cabin, badge held high. "Federal agents, we're here for Thomas Anderson and James Wilson." After years of darkness, justice had arrived with the morning light. The subsequent hours passed in a blur of statements, medical evaluations, and explanations. The FBI had been building a case against Meridian for months, spurred by the evidence Tom had managed to release. When the news of Ranger's discovery went viral, connecting him to Tom's disappearance, it had accelerated their timeline. As federal agents processed the scene and paramedics attended to Tom and Wilson, Lily sat on the cabin's porch steps with Ranger stretched out beside her, his head resting on her lap. The German shepherd looked utterly spent, the last of his strength expended in completing his mission, but there was peace in his amber eyes that hadn't been there before. Sarah joined them, wrapping a blanket around Lily's shoulders against the mountain chill. "Your dad's going to be okay," she told her niece. "It'll take time, but he's coming home." Lily nodded, her fingers gently stroking Ranger's graying muzzle. "I knew Ranger would find him. Dad always said he was the best tracker in the unit." "He never gave up," Sarah agreed, marveling at the dog's extraordinary loyalty. "Not even when everyone else did." As the autumn sun climbed higher over the mountains, bathing the world in golden light, Ranger dozed beneath Lily's gentle touch, his mission finally complete. The road ahead would be long healing for Tom, adjustment for Lily, justice for those responsible, but they would walk it together, bound by a love and loyalty that had proven stronger than time, distance, or the darkest human cruelty. Some bonds, once formed, can never truly be broken. In a world where loyalty seems fleeting and heroes often go unrecognized, this story of an 8-year-old girl and her father's retired military dog reminds us of what truly matters. Like many of us who've witnessed America's changing values over the decades, Ranger, the German shepherd, embodied the virtues we hold dear: unwavering loyalty, sacrifice without question, and a commitment that doesn't fade with time or hardship. When Lily found Ranger starving, abandoned, and forgotten by the very institutions he served, she didn't see damaged goods. She saw family. Her childlike faith in the bond between her father and his K-9 partner mirrors the faith many of us place in the enduring values that built this nation. How many of us have felt pushed aside as we age, our contributions forgotten? Yet, like Ranger, our worth isn't diminished by others' failure to recognize it. This remarkable